Chapter 1. Routine Silence. The storm hadn't let up in 6 days. Wind rattled the comms deck, sleet clattered against the windows. The steel frame groaned with every gust. Keira North stood by the main observation window and the upper comms deck, arms folded, watching snow shear sideways across the floodlights outside. Wind screamed against the reinforced glass. Somewhere beneath that white abyss, the rest of the world had gone silent. The storm didn't bother her. Weather could be measured, predicted. It was people who disrupted protocol. That never changed, not even down here. Behind her, the station creaked and groaned like an old ship. Pipes ticked, steel flexed. Her reflection hovered ghost-like on the glass, pale face, dark thermal gear, tension locked in her shoulders. Echo Point Station wasn't built for comfort. It had been carved into the ice like a bunker and retrofitted year after year with just enough parts to keep it breathing. Fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead. A dull hum filled the silence. Fans, compressors, the nervous heartbeat of a system slowly wearing thin. The air smelled faintly of ozone, copper, and thawed plastic. Somewhere down the corridor, water dripped rhythmically into a bucket.
But that was before the blackout. Now it was something else entirely.
Still no comms, she asked without turning. From the corner of the same room, cluttered with patch cables, spare batteries, and half-disassembled signal amplifiers, Nico Reyes muttered, "Dead air, same as yesterday, same as last week." She turned. Reyes was hunched over a console, black hair shoved under a knit cap, half a ration bar clenched between his teeth. Suddenly, the overhead lights blinked twice and dimmed. The monitor in front of Reyes gave a sharp pop and went dark. "Shit," he muttered, tapping the side of the console. Nothing. He crouched, yanked open a panel beneath the desk, and began fiddling with the wiring. A few sparks danced as he rewired a junction. The hum of the system stuttered, then returned. "That's the 3rd short this week. One more and we'll be soldering with spit." The screen blinked back to life. "There we go. Crisis averted. Until the next one." He didn't look up. "If this power drop keeps trending, we're having emergency stew tonight. You like your freeze-dried with a hint of diesel, right?" Keira didn't smile. She rarely did. "I'll cook," he added. "Not a threat, a promise." "System integrity?" she asked. "Stable-ish. External sensors are still lagging and the east relay is acting drunk. I'll fix it after my date with the heating grid." She crossed to the main console. A wide, scuffed terminal bolted into the far wall of the command module, scanning readouts. Battery levels, wind velocity, ambient temperature, internal oxygen balance. Everything holding, barely. He leaned back in his chair, watching her. "You ever think maybe the storm's never going to end?" She ignored that. From the far hallway, soft footsteps echoed. Dr. Lena Volkov appeared in the doorway, half-shadowed beneath a hood. "Commander," she said. "Someone accessed the message bank last night." Kira's head tilted slightly. "What time?" 0213. "Who?" The user ID was masked. Of course it was. Keira exchanged a glance with Reyes. He raised an eyebrow but didn't speak.
Volkov stepped further in. At first I thought it was a diagnostic, maybe a log glitch. I checked the sensor feeds myself, but no, the access was deliberate.
Keira nodded. "Show me." As they exited the comms deck, the hallway lights flickered with a hesitant buzz. The narrow corridor leading to the main terminal was lined with frost-glazed conduit and scuffed emergency lockers. Somewhere nearby, the muffled sound of laughter echoed briefly. Cast and Rowe probably in the rec room again. A ping-pong ball bounced once, then again, before silence reclaimed the base. In the command module, dim, low-ceilinged, and always too cold, The lights flickered once before stabilizing. Keira sat at the main terminal as Volkov pulled up the system logs. The playback interface blinked, then loaded the last known message from McMurdo. The file was partially corrupted, audio static, flickers of a face, a voice, male, urgent, strained through distortion.
Do not let anyone in. Repeat. Do not let anyone in, even if they look like us.
The screen cut to black. Keira sat still.
A sudden memory pulled at her, not of war or training, but that gut-deep instinct from a decade ago, staring at a fractured radar feed on a Norwegian transport, the moment before the crash, when she already knew something was wrong. Hours later, Ro had pulled her from the wreckage. That same instinct was stirring now.
That same chill behind the heart. Who else has seen this? Just us, Volkov said quietly. So far. She hesitated, just for a moment. Part of her wanted to call an all-hands meeting, lay everything on the table. But protocol weighed heavier. Fear made people stupid. Until she knew what this was, a prank, a test pattern, or something worse, it stayed contained.
She thought about waking Ro. Once, in a whiteout north of Nuuk, he'd been the man who steadied her through the crash. Now he only carved animals and left them to freeze in the greenhouse corridor.
Outside, the wind howled like something hungry. A faint vibration passed through the floor, so subtle she almost missed it, like the bass itself had exhaled, then gone still. In the greenhouse corridor, the sound of something clattered faintly, a dropped tool maybe, then silence again. She checked the logs again. The file had been accessed at 0213. The user ID was masked. Someone in this station already knew, and still hadn't told her.
That was the part that mattered. The broadcast wasn't new. It had been buried until now. Whoever masked their ID hadn't stumbled onto it. They'd gotten looking. And then they'd chosen silence. Chapter 2. Friction. The rec room felt warmer than the rest of the station, but only just. Rows of mismatched chairs were shoved back from the ping-pong table, where Cass Moreau leaned across the net and flicked the ball toward Ro without looking. "That's game," she said, grinning. "Pay up." Dr. Conrad Rowe raised an eyebrow and pulled a protein bar from his coat pocket. "You only win when I let you." "Sure, you let me the last 4 times too, right?" He pulled a ration bar from his pocket, peeled back the crinkled wrapper with careful fingers, and passed it over. Cass collapsed into one of the chairs, breath flagging slightly. "You hear the storm last night? Thought the roof was going to peel off." "It always sounds worse in the greenhouse wing," Rose said. "The wind funnels weird over the old ductwork, makes it howl." Cass leaned across the table, flipping the ping-pong ball into her palm. "You ever finish that fox?" Rose tilted his head. "The one in the greenhouse?" "Yeah, you left it on the ledge by the CO2 pipes. Looked almost done." "It's not a fox, it's a lynx." "Huh, lynx does look grumpy." He smiled faintly. "It's patient. Big difference." "You always carve endangered species, or just the ones that judge people?" He snapped the protein bar in half and offered her the other piece. "Come by sometime. I'll loan you my encyclopedia of animals. Page 1, lynx." She took it without answering.
"Are you flirting with me?" she asked, finally, voice flat.
Ro paused again, his brows lifting. For a long second, he just looked at her. Then, faintly, almost to himself, he smiled.
Maybe I am. She hadn't expected it, not from him, but deep down, she knew. Something in the way he looked at her lingered too long, too steady. The warmth that rose in her chest was as startling as his words. Cass masked it with a half smile, but her voice betrayed her. Careful, Ro. I might believe you.
The door opened and Keira North stepped in, followed closely by Nico Reyes. Nico's eyes flicked briefly toward her as he entered, not just checking for orders, but watching the way she carried herself. Tense, controlled, too controlled. He didn't say anything, but his glance lingered a second longer than it should have. The laughter drained from the room.
Brief update, Keira said. I'll keep it quick.
Cass straightened up. Rose sat up, tucking the wrapper away. Nico leaned against the wall, arms crossed, trying to look casual. Keira didn't glance at him. Comms are still down, she said. Internal power stabilizing. Volkov's running a log check. Nothing critical, but anomalies. What kind of anomalies? Cass asked. Message access. Masked login. 0213 this morning. Rose brow furrowed. That's not on the rotation. No, it's not, Keira said. Nico's eyes flicked toward Cass. So, someone's poking around the logs and didn't leave a name tag. Keira nodded once. No need to panic. Not yet. We're running tracebacks. Could be system drift, glitch, but we keep it contained until we know more. Cass opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Her fingers drummed on the table. Ro glanced between them. What was accessed?
Keira hesitated. Volkov hadn't suggested sharing it, so Keira hadn't ordered it shared. But the question hung there, heavy. Before she could speak, Nico added, We caught a corrupted file. Might have been from McMurdo, might not. We'd missed it. It was buried because the playbacks glitched. Looks like it was supposed to be their last message. Keira gave him a sharp look, but he only shrugged and tapped the console. Keira warned. Too late. The file was already loading.
The static burst filled the room like a slap. A male voice, broken by distortion. Do not let anyone in, even if they look like us. The clip cut off. Silence followed. Cass took a slow step back. Was that real? Ro didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the screen, unmoving. Jesus, Nico muttered. Bit heavy for a weather report. He waited for someone to laugh. No one did. The silence stretched, sharp and static-filled. Even Nico's smirk faltered. Keira exhaled through her nose. No one speaks of this outside this room. Not yet. Until we understand what we're dealing with, it doesn't leave this space. Cass looked at her, defiant. You're kidding, right? We don't know what it is. Hoax, test, signal bleed. We don't guess. Ro finally spoke. It didn't sound like a test. Keira turned. You think it's real? He looked tired. I think someone wanted it heard. Cass folded her arms. Then we should warn the others. At least Lena.
Volkov's already aware. It was her idea not to make it public, Keira said flatly.
She left the room without waiting for agreement. Nico lingered, then followed. Cass watched him go. Then, quietly to Ro.
That's it. We just wait? Ro looked toward the wall, where the screen had gone dark again. I believe waiting might be the only safe move left. As if in answer, the overhead lights flickered. Twice, then once more, and the hum of the rec room's heater stuttered. Ro rubbed her arms. Feels colder. Ro didn't reply for us. His gaze lingered on the lights overhead, then the console where the message had played.
A low hum still vibrated beneath the floor, the station's heartbeat. Steady, but off. Subtle, but there. He looked toward the sealed bulkhead. Something's different today. Rose sat back down. Well, he said quietly, so much for routine. The corridor outside the rec room was quiet now. Most of the crew had drifted back to their stations. Keira stood alone near the backup lockers, scanning her tablet, but not really reading. The hum of the station felt louder in the silence. Nico lingered by the far end of the corridor, one hand resting lightly on a wall rail. He hadn't spoken since the meeting. No wisecracks, no smirks. You should have let me handle that, Keira said without looking up. You paused. Didn't think you would. She finally met his eyes. I didn't authorize you to play it. No, but I figured the part where it says don't let them in kind of trumped chain of command. Keira studied him. You always test boundaries. And you never flinch. It's a dance. She turned back to the tablet. I don't dance. He took a step closer. You used to. You were different during the Svalbard mission. Kira's jaw flexed. That was a different kind of cold. A beat passed. He almost smiled, not mocking this time, just remembering. Chapter 3, Containment. The technical deck was colder than it should have been. Volkov adjusted the thermal cuff on her sleeve and leaned over the diagnostics array, watching code scroll past in pale green lines. Everything here hummed quietly, not with life, but function. Machines doing what they were told until they don't. She tapped in a command to cross-check comm log timestamps. The screen blinked once, then showed the access entry, 0213. But when she forced a sync with the internal server clock, another line appeared, threading itself beneath the first like a ghost shadow, 0313. Her fingers paused on the keyboard, 1 hour apart, same node, same data packet. But it wasn't just the timestamp that bothered her. The metadata showed no user ID, no signature, no system trail. Someone or something had accessed the file and left no trace. That shouldn't be possible, not even on Echo Point's half-broken software mesh. She reran the query, same result. She frowned and initiated a full scan. The screen twitched. The cursor blinked erratically. Don't do that, she said under her breath, already knowing it wouldn't listen. The diagnostics array stuttered, then resumed. Glitch, maybe. Or maybe something was watching the system work. Footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. It's not a hardware fault. I didn't say it was, Keira replied. Volkov straightened. 2 timestamps, 1 packet. Same corruption, different access. Internal, not bounced from McMurdo. Keira stepped beside her, arms folded. Could it be echo data? Feedback loop? No, this isn't a misfire. It's mirrored, but only the file access time. The rest of the logs are clean. Kira's eyes stayed on the screen. Which timestamp is accurate? Volkov hesitated. System treats both as real. A long pause. Then Keira said, That's not possible. Volkov didn't reply. Her eyes moved across the data columns, calculating something silently. She wanted to believe it was just a software glitch. Something simple, mechanical, logical. But the silence inside the system felt aware, like something was watching them back through the code. They stood in the hum of machines. Somewhere beneath them, a low mechanical clunk echoed, the kind you felt more than heard. Volkov glanced at the floor. Integrity scans running. Keira didn't ask for permission to take the console. Show me. Volkov gestured to a nearby terminal. Numbers flickered, lines of green text resolving and reassembling. The scan moved slowly, then it didn't. A block of code froze. Data reappeared, then flickered again. A red flag. That can't be right, Volkov murmured. What? Keira asked, already frowning. Volkov turned her screen slightly. A ping. It came from Storage Annex 4B, but it's labeled with McMurdo's relay header. Keira straightened. I want eyes on that section, not just diagnostics. You mean physically? Grab your kit. Minutes later, Keira and Volkov stood near the auxiliary maintenance shaft behind Annex 4B. The corridor was dark, barely warmed. Their breath fogged in the flashlight beams. No one's logged physical access here in weeks. Volkov scanned her tablet. Door logs clean, no movement. Keira crouched, running a gloved hand over the panel seam. Frost flaked off in delicate white strands. Does this feel warmer to you? Volkov hesitated. It should be cold-sealed. Even touching it should sting. Keira popped the panel open. A puff of mist hissed outward. Not cold, but warm. Her fingers jerked back. That's impossible, Volkov whispered. Inside, coiled wiring sat perfectly arranged, too perfectly, like it had been reset. Keira narrowed her eyes. Whoever was here cleaned up after themselves. Volkov checked her screen. System still says baseline normal. Keira looked into the warm, humming cavity. Then the system's lying. A soft scraping echoed from deeper inside the panel, like wires shifting against metal. Volkov flinched. That wasn't wind, Keira said. The mess was half empty when Keira walked in. Nico sat with his boots propped on a chair. Cass leaned over a ration packet. Ro was silent, his hands folded. Keira dropped her gloves onto the table. Annex 4B's panel's been reset. System calls it normal, it isn't. Cass blinked. Reset? By who? Keira said. Door logs show no access. Weeks clean. Nico straightened. Then someone bypassed the logs. Ro's eyes lifted, steady. We'd have noticed. Silence pressed at the edges of the room. Everyone's mind had gone to the same place, but no one wanted to be the first to say it. Finally, Cass's voice cut in, too fast. So it has to be one of us. No one argued, but no one agreed either.
Chapter 4. Interference.
The greenhouse corridor was colder than it should have been. Frost clung to the CO2 pipes in pale ridges, the air sharp with damp insulation. Cass walked the length of the corridor with her hands jammed into her jacket, pretending to check the gauges, but mostly listening. It was quiet, too quiet. She paused by the row of cracked grow lamps, watching her breath fog. A tool lay on the floor near the maintenance hatch, a spanner, rim frosted white. She crouched, touched it, then set it back. No one should have been working here. Ro's voice from earlier came back to her. We'd have noticed. Her jaw tightened. She wanted to believe it, but the wiring in Annex 4B hadn't reset itself. She straightened, eyes lingering on the dark hatch at the end of the corridor. Then who did? She whispered. The hum of the station answered, low, steady, and wrong.
Keira stood at the head of the command module, one hand braced on the edge of the hollow table. The crew had gathered fast. Word of the lockdown had spread, and no one wanted to pretend anymore. Whatever was happening in Annex 4B wasn't just a system hiccup. Volkov pulled up a schematic. The ping came from inside Storage Annex 4B. It mimicked McMurdo's relay signature perfectly, but McMurdo's been offline for months. Cass exhaled sharply. So
It's a ghost signal. No, Volkov said flatly. It's not random. It only responded when I ran an integrity scan, which means something in there knew it was being looked at. Nico leaned back in his chair. That sounds like sabotage, or someone screwing around. Lena crossed her arms, then explained the dual timestamps, or how a sealed section had network access. Keira raised her hand. Let's stay on track. No one goes near 4B until we know what we're dealing with. From down the corridor, a soft clatter echoed. Then again. Then again. The same rhythm. Cass paused, turning slightly. That's the third time I've heard that. Nico looked toward the sound. Something drop? Yeah, same something, 3 times. Keira's gaze sharpened. Are any of the rec feeds looping? Volkov checked her tablet. Not locally. Then what the hell's on repeat? Cass moved toward the hallway, muttering something under her breath, and Nico followed. I'm going to pull the greenhouse corridor readings again. She thumbed her access tag against the scanner. The bulkhead between engineering and maintenance clicked, then stayed closed. She frowned and tried again. The light on the panel blinked amber. Blocked? Nico asked. Shouldn't be. This isn't even near 4B. She pressed the manual override. Nothing. The door didn't even hiss. Volkov stepped up behind them. That section's not on lockdown. I know, Cass said flatly. She slapped her palm against the scanner again. Open. No response. Nico leaned in. Let me guess. It says status optimal? Cass snorted. Not even. It says nothing at all. Volkov stepped forward, keyed in a local diet tag. And if it comes to us instead? A moment of silence. Rowe broke it. You're assuming it hasn't already. Cass shot in the glance, sharp but unreadable. If it has, she said quietly, then maybe we need our own backup plan. Rowe raised an eyebrow. Meaning? If this place turns on us, if things get weird, they already are. I mean worse. A pause. He nodded once. Then we look out for each other. She gave the faintest smile. Links packed? Links packed. Keira's voice cut in before they could say more. Volkov cleared her throat. There's something else. I checked the environmental controls. Air scrubbers twitched into override mode 30 minutes ago. Oxygen levels are fine, but CO2 is creeping. Nico glanced at the ceiling vents. I've had a headache since breakfast. Cass rubbed her arms again. I thought I was just tired, but the air's tight, like it doesn't want to leave your lungs. Volkov checked her readouts again. It's within acceptable range, technically. Technically doesn't make it easier to breathe, Cass muttered. Nico swayed slightly and braced himself on the console. Okay, that's not just in my head. Cass stepped closer. You all right? Bit of vertigo, he said, like standing up too fast, but slower. Volkov frowned. Vitals are normal. Pulse ox says 98. Then the station's faking my body too. Keira narrowed her eyes. Manual override? No. The logs show the change, but no source. It wasn't authorized. Lena stepped toward the terminal. Then we isolate the faulty node and bypass the relay. Cass shook her head. That's treating symptoms. What if the whole system's infected? The screen flickered. Volkov glanced up. That wasn't me. A low vibration rippled underfoot. Subtle, but wrong. Keira motioned for quiet. The lights dimmed again, only for a second, then returned. The hollow cable refreshed itself automatically, glitching once before it stabilized. Cass looked around. Did we just blink? Volkov checked the time. System clock jumped forward 7 seconds. That's not drift. That's rewrite. Nico muttered. We're inside something else's script. Keira didn't like metaphors. We need to get ahead of it. Volkov, run a full atmospheric check. If it's the scrubbers, I want a physical inspection. Minutes later, Cass and Nico were in the greenhouse corridor. The air felt heavier here. Not toxic, just thicker. She wiped her finger across a glass panel. Moisture. It hadn't been there earlier. Condensations formed on the inside of the sealed doors, subtle but visible. As they entered the corridor, Cass slowed near a sealed EVA locker bolted to the wall. Faded white, its inventory tag barely clinging on. The nameplate read Lang, almost scrubbed clean by time and moisture. She paused. Lang worked this section, right? Nico nodded, distracted. Diagnostics and airflow calibration. Back when this wing had a different filter array. Huh. She stared at the nameplate a second longer. Weird how some names don't go away. Then Cass moved closer, a different kind of chill going over her skin. Nico crouched near the floor vent. Hear that? Cass nodded. It's breathing weird. Nico popped the vent open. The grate hissed slightly. He reached in, then pulled his hand back fast. Shit! That's ice! A second hiss followed, louder this time. Then a bang. The vent shuttered. Frost particles burst outward in a sudden puff. Nico staggered back, cursing, cradling his hand. Cass flinched. What the hell? It kicked back, Nico said. Eyes wide. Pressure surge. That shouldn't happen on a sealed line. She grabbed his wrist, checked for injury. His glove was damp. Skin beneath is going red. We need to report this, she said. Nico shook his head. No alert, no trigger. The system didn't register it. Cass looked at the vent. Cold mist still leaked from the edge. Slow, like breath through teeth. It's watching us, she whispered. Behind them, the greenhouse lights flickered again. Cass leaned down. A maintenance tool, covered in frost, sat just inside the shaft. It was a small wrench, one she recognized from the toolkits they kept in engineering. But no one had been down here in days. The ice clinging to it wasn't natural. It wasn't just cold. It shimmered faintly, like condensation that had frozen mid-breath. She didn't touch it. She had the sudden, irrational urge to check her breath too, to see if it too would freeze and hang in the air like that. She said, It's too clean. No dust, no scratch marks. Like someone left it there perfectly. Nico didn't respond right away. He just stared at the wrench right it might twitch. Something about the way it lay there, perfectly centered in the vent, felt wrong. Too deliberate, too placed. She exchanged a glance with Nico. For once, he didn't make a joke. She said quietly, That wasn't there yesterday. Behind them, the lights buzzed, briefly. No system warning, no alert. The environmental panel on the wall read, Status, optimal. Cass rubbed her chest. Is it just me, or is the air heavy? Nico checked the panel. CO2's optimal. She shook her head. Then why does it feel like breathing through goals? A faint hiss whispered from a nearby vent. Nico moved closer, placing a hand near the grate. This shouldn't be active. Greenhouse flow is sealed at night. He stood, staring at the readout. The system says everything's normal. It's lying, Cass said. Cass stared at it. A slow dread curled in her stomach. The station was lying to them, and worse, it was doing so calmly, reassuringly. We're not fine, she whispered. Keira's voice came through the comm. Report.
Chapter 5. Infiltration. Cass woke to a soft clatter. It wasn't loud, but it was wrong. She blinked against the green emergency light strip above her bunk. No alarms, just the hum of power, the creak of metal settling in the cold. She pulled on her jacket and slipped out of bed, feet bare against the warm flooring of the dorm wing. Another sound, a low mechanical thunk, echoed faintly from the hallway. She grabbed her flashlight. The dormitory corridor was half lit. One overhead bulb buzzed fitfully, casting elongated shadows that shivered with each flicker. She stepped out. The moment she crossed the threshold, her breath fogged. "Come on," she muttered. "The temp had been fine earlier." She moved quietly, eyes scanning the motionless doors. Everyone's room was sealed, except one, Rose. His door was half open, a strip of red light leaking out from within. Cass hesitated. Then she stepped forward and nudged it open with 2 fingers. The room was empty, the bunk made, terminal active. A faint loop played across the screen. Signal integrity accepted. Over and over. She backed out. The hallway behind her seemed darker now. Footsteps, not hers, soft, muffled, from further down the dorm. Cass froze. She waited. Nothing. Then a shape moves behind the frosted glass of the utility door. Only a flicker, like someone turning. She stepped back and bumped into someone. Cass spun, already halfway to swinging the flashlight. It was Ro. He blinked, calm. "Didn't mean to scare you." She kept the light on him. "You weren't in your room." "I was walking the loop." "At this hour?" Cass stared at him. He was calm, too calm. His eyes didn't quite meet hers. "What loop?" she asked. "We haven't had patrols for 3 nights." Ro blinked slowly. "Then maybe I was just remembering one." He turned, walking away with silent steps, like he was retracing something he'd already done. Ro's head tilted. "We haven't had a this hour for days." He walked past her, quiet as fog, and disappeared into the hallway. Cass exhaled, pulse racing. In the command module, Keira reviewed the footage. The security feed from the dorm hallway showed Cass moving, pausing, retreating, but no sign of Ro. Nothing at all. She tapped her comm. "Volkov, are you seeing this?" "I am. I just checked the system logs." "And?" "There's no record of Ro's door opening." Keira's eyes narrowed. He spoke to her. He was there. "Apparently, not officially." A silence passed. "I'm tracing all subsystem access from the last 2 hours," Volkov said. "Something's routing commands through unlogged channels. I'm seeing terminal echoes in Greenhouse, Medbay, and Tech Deck, but no access credentials." Keira folded her arms. "Keep digging. Cross-reference with personal tags." "Already started." Later that day, Nico stood near the greenhouse corridor hatch, watching mist slide across the inner glass. "This place is sweating," he muttered. Cass joined him, arms crossed. "You still think this is just bad wiring?" "I'm not sure what I think anymore." They entered. The plants looked normal, if a little pale, but the humidity was higher than it should be. The vents let out a soft wheeze, like the station was catching its breath. Nico walked to a control panel, tapped the screen. Temp, normal. Humidity, slightly high. Pressure. He stopped. "What?" He turned the screen so she could see. Indoor pressure, normal. Recalibrated baseline, -2.1%. Cass leaned in. "It changed the baseline." "Yeah, and didn't log the change." Cass opened a storage drawer beside the main panel. Inside, tools,
labeled and clean, but the wrench from earlier, the one they'd found frozen, sat on top, still rimmed with ice. She stepped back. That was in the vent. I left it in isolation. Nico didn't move. A low clunk came from behind the vines. Both turned. A misty handprint slowly appeared on the glass. No movement, no shadow, just the print. Then the light above them flickered and the pressure monitor reset. Everything read green. Volkov sat alone at her station, pulling diagnostics. She had isolated a copy of the station's core logic structure. Except there were two. One was live, the other mirrored it, delayed by seconds, with occasional deviations in values, minor things, heat thresholds, comms latency, door access. She flipped open the folder labeled _crew_row. It was empty. The screen blinked once. A message flashed, too quick to catch. Then it vanished. The folder began to fill. Then it wasn't. A stream of data poured in, not text, not logs, behavior, time-stamped motion across the station. But none of it matched the footage. Volkov leaned back slowly. Something was shadowing them, imitating them, but not quite correctly. Volkov stayed at her desk long after the screen dimmed. She didn't move, didn't blink much, just listened to the soft ticking of heat exchangers overhead and the faint hum of a system that wasn't quite lying, but wasn't telling the full truth either. After a long moment, she reached under the console and unlocked a slim backup tablet, old, analog-linked, no cloud, no sync. She powered it up, hands calm but careful. Then she copied the full log archive, both core logic streams, plus the _crew_row anomaly to a clean storage wafer. There was no alert, no objection, no flicker of resistance. Just a simple transfer. Volkov ejected the wafer and stared at it in her palm. After a beat, she labeled it in neat handwriting. Control copy. Do not trust system. She slipped it into the sealed lining of her coat, where no scanner would flag it. Not out of paranoia, just procedure, just protocol, just in case the system tried to rewrite the evidence tomorrow.
Roe came in through the mess doorway, brushing frost from his gloves. His parka was half unzipped, collar damp with melt. He looked tired, but steady. Hydro valve on the greenhouse line was sticking again, he said. Took a while to cycle it. Cass stood up sharply. She caught herself. You were in the dorm wing. I saw you. I spoke to you. He frowned. Haven't set foot there all night. Her throat tightened. Your terminal, your room was open, running a loop. I locked it before I left. His gaze was level, calm, but puzzled. If it was open, then someone else was in there. Keira looked between them. We'll check the logs. Volkov, quiet at her station, didn't look up. Already did. His room shows no activity. Door never opened. Cass's pulse thudded in her ears. That's not possible. I was standing right there. Roe's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened, a flicker of concern, not defense. Then whoever you saw, he said quietly, wasn't me. The mess fell silent. Only the low tick of the heaters filled the gap. Cass turned away, unsettled. And for the first time, she realized maybe the station wasn't just lying to them. Maybe it was borrowing them. Chapter 6.
the visitor. The storm had been constant for the past 3 hours. Keira sat in the command module, elbows on the desk, cycling through the exterior feeds with quiet precision. Ice needled the camera domes. Snow slashed sideways across the empty perimeter. Nothing. 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 Then, something. She leaned in, a faint figure, half obscured by static and the storm's white churn, moving slowly but deliberately from the southern ridge. "Volkov, get eyes on external south, feed 12. "I see it," came the reply, already alert. The figure was wearing a standard EVA suit, old model, faded markings. Kaz appeared at her side, tugging her jacket on. "What is that?" "No idea, but it's walking like it knows where it's going." The figure paused just outside the secondary access hatch. It turned toward the camera, raised a hand. "Is that a wave?" Nico said, voice behind them now. Volkov zoomed in. The ID patch on the suit was faint, ice-encrusted, but barely legible. Lang. Silence fell across the room. "That's not possible," Kaz whispered. Rose stepped in from the corridor, face unreadable. "Lang died 2 winters ago. North relay collapse." Volkov's fingers danced over her console. "That suit's transponder is broadcasting authentic echo point codes, his codes." "He was never assigned that suit," Keira said. Her voice was tight. "We decommissioned that model 3 years ago." Kaz swallowed. "He's waving again." On screen, Lang knelt in the snow, slowly, deliberately. He pressed something to the access panel. A low beep echoed through the command room's speakers. He just entered an override handshake, an old one, pre-blackout. The lights dimmed for half a second. Systems auto-checked. Override code recognized, airlock unlocked. "Keira," Lena started. "I know," Keira said. They stood there. No one moved. Nico broke the silence. "Protocol says no one comes in unverified. We lock it down." "He's freezing to death out there," Kaz said. "He's supposed to be dead," Ro added, "and he shouldn't have those codes." Volkov cut in. "If we don't act now, the airlock will cycle. It's letting him in." Keira stared at the screen. Lang was just standing now, helmet turned slightly toward the camera, still, waiting. Kaz turned to her. "Keira?" Another second passed. "Open the inner seal," Keira said. Volkov hesitated. "That's against—" "Do it." The hiss of pressure doors sounded behind them. The crew turned as the interior lock slid open. The man stepped in, slow and careful, frost steaming off the suit. He reached up, unclipped the helmet, and there he was. Lang. Hair is slightly longer, eyes are the same, even the small scar above his left brow. He looked at them all, a calm smile on his face. "It's good to be home," he said. No one replied. Lang's smile didn't fade. He kept looking at them, one by one, as if checking names off a list only he could see. Kira's hands tensed at her sides. That same gut-deep warning from Norway pulsed through her ribs. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. Behind Lang, the inner airlock hissed shut, not by command. On the control panel, the status light flickered green, then white, then off. Behind him, the airlock door sealed itself, not by command. Keira watched the indicator flash red, then green, then nothing at all. Chapter 7. Echoes. The mess hall was too quiet. Lang sat at the far end of the table, frost still crusted in the seams of his suit. He had stripped off the gloves and helmet, but not the rest. The fabric steamed faintly in the recycled air. He didn't look exhausted. He looked steady. Keira stood near the bulkhead, arms folded tight. It shouldn't be. Lang's eyes moved over them one by one, not searching, counting. He stopped on Ro, and a faint smile tugged at his mouth. Still carving. Ro's hand flexed on the table, his jaw locked, but he didn't answer. Beneath the table, his knife dug too deep into the wood he carried, leaving a ragged splinter. He stilled his hand as if he realized he'd let something slip. Nico leaned back, arms crossed. Cute trick. What am I thinking right now? Lang's gaze flicked to him. You think about her when she isn't looking. Nico flushed, his smirk collapsing. He glanced at Keira, mouth half open, caught between denial and shock. Kira's eyes met his for a heartbeat, then turned away too fast. What unsettled her wasn't Nico's look. It was how easily Lang had spoken the thought aloud, like reading it from a meter. The smirk faltered. Silence spread. Kira's eyes flicked to Nico, then away too fast. Her chest tightened, not at the truth of it, but at the way Lang had peeled it out so casually, like reading a gauge. Volkov broke it. I run a backtrace. His entry point doesn't exist. Keira turned. Explain. I've pulled logs for all hatch cycles in the last 6 hours. Nothing. Internal cams in 2A and 3C went blind for 90 seconds, then came back showing him already inside.
Nico leaned back with a snort. That's neat. Guy shows up out of nowhere and suddenly our logs are blind. Cass's eyes locked on Lang. So it was you, wasn't it? Resetting panels, wiping feeds, making the base lie to us. At least now we know who's been screwing with the systems. The room went very still. Lang looked genuinely puzzled, brows knitting. I don't know what you mean. Ro's knife dug a little deeper into the wood in his hand, then stilled.
Blind how? Ro asked. Static, not deletion, like the feed was never there, almost like the system blinked on purpose. Keira's jaw tightened, and his bio sign? Volkov hesitated. Matches archived medical for Lang, down to the blood type, but the temporal stamp reads today. Nico muttered, so the station thinks he's alive because maybe he is. Ro's voice was quiet, or because something wants us to believe that. Lang didn't flinch. He just sat with his hands folded, listening. The speakers cracked. Static burst across the room in 3 uneven pulses, like something knocking against the hull in a slow rhythm, before a voice bled through. Survivors, breach, not. Human voice, do not. Everyone froze. Volkov scrambled to stabilize the feed. Header codes stamped across the screen. McMurdo relay. Cass's eyes lit. It's them. They're alive. No, Keira said flatly. McMurdo's dead. Ro leaned closer. That didn't sound dead. Volkov frowned at her console, locking onto origin. Wait, the trace keeps looping through Annex 4B. Keira stiffened. The annex is sealed. Volkov glanced at Lang, then back to her readouts. Doesn't matter, it's active, right now.
Nico leaned forward, eyes narrowing on Lang. So if the signal's firing from 4B, if he's been our saboteur, how's that possible while he's sitting right here. Cass's voice was low, tight. Unless there's more than one.
Rose's eyes narrowed. Or one of us has been opening that annex without logging it. The silence stretched. No one wanted to look at anyone else for too long. Keira finally cut in, voice sharp. Enough. We stay with what's in front of us. But even as she said it, the thought lingered. If it wasn't Lang, then who? Cass's hands balled at her sides, knuckles white. The silence pressed in, heavier than the storm outside, until she snapped forward, patch a reply.
Her voice cracked, more pleading than defiant. If it's McMurdo, if even one of them made it, we can't ignore it. You can't ask us to.
Keira cut her off. No, not until we know what we're doing. Cass shoved her aside, fingers slamming the console. McMurdo, this is Echo Point. Do you read? The line hissed. A hollow reply bled through, warped. Echo, copy, breach, then silence. Cass's knuckles whitened on the panel, her hands shook, nails scraping plastic. The fight in her eyes gave way to something rawer, the fear of being unheard. They heard us. Run it again. Volkov tried. The system stuttered, error lines crawling her display. It's refusing the return path. Every time I send, the signal bounces back to us.
If it is McMurdo, why answer only now? She frowned. Origin trace says McMurdo, but the loop keeps folding through our own relay. It shouldn't do that.
Rose's face was unreadable, or like someone else is holding the wire. Keira pulled Cass back from the console. Enough. That wasn't McMurdo. Cass looked ready to shove her way forward again, then stopped, trembling. If it was them, and we just ignored it... Keira cut her off. If it was them, they'd be alive. They're not. Before Cass could reply, another alarm cut through. A dull, repeating tone, red text flashing across the main console. External array misaligned, signal relay offline. Volkov checked. Storm torque. The dish has rotated out of alignment. If we don't reset it manually, we can't confirm or block transmissions. Keira's jaw locked. Then we go outside. I'll do it, Cass said immediately. Denied. You need me. Nico can't haul the brace alone. Nico grimaced. She's not wrong. Rose straightened. Send me instead.
No, Keira said. You stay on comms. I'll lead. Reyes and Cass with me. Volkov monitors.
Cass's fury simmered, but she said nothing. She just stood there, shaking, caught between anger and the hollow sting of being left behind. They began gathering gear, the quiet broken only by the hiss of oxygen canisters and the snap of seals. From the end of the table, Lang finally spoke, calm, almost gentle. You'll see things out there. Don't follow them. Keira froze. And how would you know that? Lang's smile didn't reach his eyes. Because I've walked that storm before.
The words landed with weight, but not like memory, more like a script, rehearsed and waiting for its cue.
The room went still. Outside, the wind screamed against the walls as if answering for him.
Chapter 8. Whiteout. The airlock cycled with a groan that reverberated in their ribs. Frost webbed the seals, trembling as the pressure shifted. Keira stood in the lead suit, visor down, her faceplate black as obsidian. She checked the tether reel at her hip, once, twice. Behind her, Nico wrestled the clamp on his gauntlet until it sealed with a hard snap.
Cass moved more slowly, fumbling at her wrist seal until Nico leaned over and locked it for her. "Comms check," Keira said. "Clear," Nico answered. Cass hesitated a beat too long. "Clear." Rose's voice came from control, calm and even. "Cass, your heart rate's high. Slow your breathing." "I'm fine," she said too quickly. Rose didn't press. "Storms at 150 sustained. Visibility 0 at 30 meters. If you lose tether, you won't find your way back." Nico muttered, inspiring as always. Keira ignored him. "On me, no stragglers, eyes forward." The outer hatch opened. The storm didn't creep in, it roared, a wall of sound and force that made the chamber shudder. Snow blasted sideways through the gap, devouring light, filling the space with a horizontal blur of white. The noise wasn't just weather, it had a rhythm, a deep pulse beneath the shrieking gusts, as if the wind carried something breathing with it. Keira stepped out first, tether clipped to the guide rail. Nico followed, already leaning against the gale. Feels like walking into a jet engine. Cass lingered, staring at the storm like it was a living thing. Then she shoved herself forward. Her tether snapped taut behind her, vibrating with the wind's pull. They moved in a line, bent low, their blue HUD lines glowing faintly in the blizzard. Every step dragged, boots crunching on ice that shifted under them like glass. Cass's breath rasped through the comms, loud and uneven. Rose's voice cut in, soft but firm. "Don't fight the gusts. Lean with them. Small steps, deliberate." Cass obeyed, but her pulse was still hammering. Rose's voice steadied her more than the tether ever could. The storm howled so deep, it seemed to live in their bones. They reached the first brace. Metals screamed under strain, vibrating through their gloves into their arms. Nico braced his boot and shoved the locking pin into place. "Talk's insane. It's like the dish wants to peel away," he grunted. "Next anchor," Keira said. Cass glanced sideways. The storm wasn't empty. Shapes moved in it, tall, narrow, human silhouettes. They leaned in unison, perfectly still against the gale, as if the wind bent around them. When she blinked, they vanished. When she blinked again, they were closer. Her throat closed. "Keira, do you see that?" "See what?" "People, standing out there. Only snow, only noise. Eyes forward," Keira snapped. Nico's voice crackled in her ear. "I don't see a damn thing." They pressed on. The dish loomed from the white, tilted, ribs crusted in ice, one anchor half torn from its foundation. Nico clipped in, breath steaming inside his visor. Keira cranked the strut. The dish resisted, groaned, then shuddered back into alignment. Rose's voice sharpened. "Signal stabilizing. Steady. Hold it there. Locked. Alignment is stable." Cass let out a shaky laugh. "We did it! We actually—" Her tether jerked. She froze. The lines snapped taut around her waist, dragging her one step backward into the storm. "Keira!" Keira lunged, grabbing the tether. "Reyes, on me!" Nico planted his boots and heaved. The line thrummed under Cass's ribs, pulling her slowly, relentlessly. "Something's on her," Nico hissed. Cass's visor fogged with panic. She saw it, a figure in the white, visor dark, frost-armored suit. Her tether wrapped in its hands. It tilted its head, the exact tilt Lang had given hours earlier in the mess hall. Then her comm crackled. A voice bled through, not Lang's, her own, distorted, delayed, off by a heartbeat. "We did it. We actually—" Her chest locked. "Lang," she whispered. "Cass," Keira barked. Eyes on me, now. The tether slackened all at once. Cass pitched forward into Keira's grip, gasping. Nico reeled the line back fast, muscles straining until the coil lay slack in his hands. Cass's HUD timer jumped 3 full seconds. She hadn't blinked. The gap sat there, missing, like someone had cut a strip out of time. Nothing there, he panted. So either we've got 2 Langs, or the base just learned impressions. Cass knew what she'd seen. Ro's voice cracked sharply through the storm. Inside, now. They turned back, dragging themselves step by step. Twice Cass stumbled, and twice Nico caught her under the arm. The storm hammered at their suits, trying to tear them away. The station's lights swum into view, blurred, haloed beacons in the white. They staggered into the lock, sealed the hatch, and silence collapsed around them. Keira leaned hard against the wall, helmet dripping melt. Nico dropped onto the bench, tearing off his gloves, fingers shaking. Cass ripped off her helmet, gasping for cold air. Her face was bloodless, hair damp and plastered to her skin. It was him, out there. He had the line. Nico rubbed his face with unsteady hands, so either we've got 2 Langs or the base just learned impressions. Ro's voice was low. Not pulled, invited. Then invited by what? Him? Or something wearing his face? Cass flinched, hugging her arms tight. The echo of her own voice still rang in her head. Too close, too exact. For the first time, she wondered if she could even trust her own mouth. Keira said nothing. Her visor display flickered, the seconds stuttering. She shut it off and pulled the helmet free, jaw clenched. For once, her silence spoke louder than orders. The corridor lights flickered. A door hissed open, slow and deliberate. Somewhere down the hall, the hiss stretched too long, like breath moving through the station itself. Cass's eyes widened, breath ragged. It followed us in. The greenhouse corridor reeked of damp soil and metal. Condensation beaded the glass, dripping in slow rivulets into drains that should have been dry. Cass crouched beside a hydroponic frame, running her finger along a jagged fracture. No alarm. Glass split like this and the system logged nothing. Nico leaned in the doorway, pale but forcing a smirk. Guess the kale finally staged a revolt. Volkov shook her head, scanner steady. The system marked it as maintenance. No breach, no fault. That's not maintenance. Cass jabbed at the crack. That's deliberate. Ro lifted a shard from the floor. Frost clung to the edges like breath caught mid-freeze. He held it to the light. It wanted this buried. Here, Kiara's voice cut through. They turned. She stood over a sealed case, half hidden beneath collapsed soil bags. Its latch gleamed as if new. Stenciled on the side, Lang. Tools. Volkov brushed off dirt, her face unreadable. This wasn't logged. She tilted the lid, so the grease pencil words became visible. Do not trust system. The words looked desperate, carved deep by a shaking hand. Cass's stomach dropped. That wasn't here yesterday. Nico's smirk died. So he left that, or he hasn't yet. All eyes turned to Lang. He only watched them, calm and unreadable. Kiara forced her gaze away. Volkov, Status on McMurdo. Volkov's fingers flew. Still dead. Her voice faltered. Wait. The holotable refreshed, overlaying schematics with a new pulse, a clean, crisp ping, McMurdo's relay signature. Cass backed up. No, that's the same fake signal, ghost code. Not the same, Volkov whispered. Stronger, closer. 3 sharp pulses. Silence. The lights flickered, then from the outside, beams of white sliced through the storm. Keira froze. That's not possible. The sound came next. Faint, then swelling into the steady, bone-deep chop of rotors. Nico's voice was thin. Tell me I'm not hearing helicopters. Floodlight beams swept across the greenhouse glass, bleaching the corridor in harsh glare. A voice cracked over comms, metallic and clipped. Stand by. Extraction inbound. Keira barked. No one moves, no one opens a thing. But the outer locks were already cycling. Snow roared inside as the bulkhead thundered open. Figures pushed through, dark uniforms, rifles slung, visors black. Their movements were perfect, practiced. Their helmets bore crude stitched patches. McMurdo. The font was wrong, the colors slightly off. Counterfeit. Identify yourselves, Keira shouted, stepping into their path. No reply. The soldiers fanned out, boots whisper quiet on wet steel. 2 halted in front of Lang. He did not resist. He stepped forward as though rehearsed. Wait, Cass lunged. You can't take him. He's the only one who knows what's happening. Rowe caught her, hauling her back. She thrashed, nearly breaking free. One soldier turned, rifle raised. The mirrored visor reflected her wide, frantic face. And then it leaned in, slowly. Its gloved hand rose and brushed the side of her helmet, across the curve of her cheek plate, lingering as though memorizing her outline, the glass fogged with her breath. Cass went rigid, throat locked, her comm hissed, and her own voice bled back at her, distorted, off by a breath. You can't take him. She gasped. Rowe wrenched her away, shoving her against the wall. Cass! His voice cracked like a whip. They walk like men, but they're not men. She trembled, staring at her reflection in the visor, a reflection that smiled when she didn't. The rotor thunder swelled until the floor shook. Frost rained from the ceiling, dust spilling from vents. The glass walls of the greenhouse rattled like drums, every pane threatening to shatter. Nico stumbled, thrown against the support strut. This whole place is gonna come apart. The soldiers didn't flinch. They shifted Lang between them, as if moving him through a drill. Keira shoved herself forward, chin raised. If you're McMurdo, prove it. Show me Delta 47 clearance. McMurdo command only. No response. They brushed past her as if she were air. Cass ripped free from Rowe, desperate. Stop! She lunged again. A soldier's rifle swung toward her chest. For a fraction of a second, the mirrored visors showed not her reflection, but Lang's face, flickering, pitying. Lang glanced back, eyes sweeping the crew, not pleading, pitying. Then he whispered, so faint it might have been in their heads, "You let me in." and he was gone, swallowed by floodlight and snow. The bulkhead is sealed. Silence fell like a lid. On the holotable, text scrolled smoothly and calmly. Status: optimal. No record of breach, no helicopters, no Lang. Cass's voice cracked. Did any of that really happen? Rose's answer was low. We were meant to doubt it. Kiara's fists clenched. She forced the words out like steel. We stopped believing in the green lights. From here on, we trust nothing but ourselves. The lights above them dimmed, flickered, then steadied. When Volkov checked her wrist display, the station clock had leapt forward 13 minutes. Chapter 10. Aftermath. The mess hall still smelled of ozone and scorched wiring. Frost clung to the viewport seams, ghosting the glass with pale veins. On the table, Lang's tether sat coiled, stiff with ice, a relic no one dared touch. The system had already erased it. No breach logged, no alarms, no visitors recorded. Status optimal glowed green on the panels. Keira stood at the end of the table, palms flat, posture iron. We stabilize Echo Point. Nobody leaves. We sweep Annex 4B, log anomalies, secure what we can control. Kaz gave a thin, tired laugh. Control? The green light wipes it clean, like it never happened. Control that. Enough, Keira snapped. Kaz's eyes stayed on the tether coil. You keep talking about command. Command died with McMurdo. The world's gone dark and you're still saluting shadows. Like we're playing pretend in a graveyard, she thought bitterly. Nico tipped his chair back, grin without warmth. She's not wrong. What happens if we disobey? You mark us down in the logbook? Rose sat apart, silent, hands folded around a cup he hadn't touched. His gaze stayed on the tether coil, like it might unravel into instructions. His silence hurt more than words. Volkov closed her tablet with a snap. Containment is still rational. Step outside, you freeze. Stay inside, we study. We find out what happened, or at least try. Facts don't change just because the logs lie. Cass's lip curled. Then you stay. I'm not waiting here to be erased. The floor ticked with pressure. 3 faint metallic beats from the annex wing. The cups on the table shivered. Rose's untouched water rippled. The green light on the wall didn't flicker. They turned to work, because repairs steadied their hands. Ro and Keira patched a bullet crease across the greenhouse glassine with resin. The wound was real, whatever the logs claimed. Rose smoothed the patch flat with a card, jaw tight. Ever think we're fixing the wrong things? He murmured. Keira pressed harder. We fix what's in front of us. He met her eyes. That used to be enough. Later, when Ro looked away, Kiera's hand lingered on the patch longer than it needed to. The resin gleamed slick under her glove, but it wasn't the glass she saw. It was Lang's face in the floodlights, calm, almost pitying, and forced herself back to work. In the corridor, Cass welded a bent doorframe, visor down. Sparks burst in a hot spray. For an instant, they drifted upward, rising slow as bubbles in reverse. She froze, breath catching. When she blinked, gravity had reasserted itself. The sparks lay hissing on the floor. Her voice came flat over comms. Imaginary raids don't leave scorch marks. From a ladder, Keira swapped out a dead bulb. We fix what we can see. Forget the logs. No point whining about what we can't. Forget the logs, Volkov muttered, recalibrating the CO2 scrubbers. She tapped her pen against the notebook before forcing her hand steady. And we've lost the only witness. She wrote it down by hand, old school. The light steadied. The hum of the station settled, hollow and too calm. Back in the mess, the table gleamed again, cup stacked, tether coiled away. The panel above glowed soft and steady. Status optimal. Keira faced them. We'll catalogue what's changed since yesterday. Thermal, acoustics, manual checks. Cass leaned forward, voice hard. Catalogue what? The raid the log said never happened. The soldiers who vanished with the sunrise. Nico's chair legs scraped as he leaned in. For God's sake, Cass, enough. We all saw it. Hammer it any harder, you're just helping it break us. Volkov didn't look up from her screen. What you need is a sedative, Kaz. Your blood pressure's about to breach containment. She sought her a glare, then sagged back in her chair, anger cooling to a thin edge. Her voice dropped, sharper but quieter. And then what? Wait until they come for another name? Nico dropped his chair flat. Or we walk to McMurdo and ask nicely. Radical idea, but at least it's an idea. You are not leaving Echo Point. Kiera's tone cracked mid-sentence, the command bleeding thin. Not while I'm in command. Cass's eyes narrowed, but her voice was calm. Then say it. What authority keeps us breathing? The green lights? Kiera's jaw worked. The authority of someone still trying to keep you alive. Rowe finally looked up. His voice was low, steady. If we don't go, what are we waiting for? For them to come back and take another? Kiera's knuckles whitened on the table edge. Better them than the storm. Is that the choice? Rowe asked. Dead men who walk, or a horizon that eats sound? Silence pressed in. Volcanova wrote fast. 0213, anomaly suspected. 3 knocks, annex corridor. The pen trembled before she steadied it, underlining the words twice. Cass pushed her chair back, but her voice was low now, resigned. Then it's settled. We go to McMurdo. McMurdo is dead. Those who pulled Lang out weren't real. The signals aren't from there. So what exactly do you think you'll find? Kiera's eyes closed for a heartbeat, tired. Gear first, she said. If you're going to defy me, at least don't die in the first hour. It should have sounded like permission. It sounded like surrender. The floor shuddered. The knocks came again, 3 deliberate strikes, closer, heavier, as though from just the other side of the wall. The cups rattled in chorus. Everyone froze. The clocks at the corners of the hall ticked in unison. Their hands slid forward together to 0213. Nico exhaled. Well, he muttered, at least time's still punctual. Chapter 11. Preparation. The storage bay was colder than the corridors. The air tasted of oil and frost-bitten rubber. 2 snowmobiles crouched under tarps like sleeping beasts. Gear racks lined the walls in tidy rows. Flares, coils of tether, Russians stacked in white bricks. Cass dropped her pack hard enough that the sound echoed. She laid out her kit in quick, jerking motions. Flare tubes onto the bench, buckles snapping, rope dragged through her hands. 8 steps, clip. 8 steps, clip, she muttered, like a prayer she didn't trust. Nico leaned against the rack, arms folded. Feels like we're packing for a picnic where the ants are weather gods. Count, Cass shot back without looking up. I am counting all the smart choices we're not making. The coil slipped from his hands and lashed across the deck, knocking a canister into the wall with a clang. Cass flinched, then masked it fast, jaw set. Keira entered with a battered tin. She sat its contents on the bench. A compass, dulled by thumb grease, a paper map in a sleeve, a whistle, 2 pencil stubs. Advice, not orders. Clip to the rail every 8 steps. If the rope pulls, you stop. Don't test it twice. If the compass spins, you trust the rope. If both fail, you sit. You wait. Cass snatched the compass before she finished. Sit. Wait. Maybe I'll still be waiting when the storm eats the rest of us. Keira tore off strips of fluorescent tape and pressed them onto Cass's shoulders. So we can see you in the feed. Cass's lip curled. Also you can track me. Volkov stepped forward with notebook open. System cleared both sleds this morning. Maintenance optimal, ignition nominal, coolant green. Then we ride in style, Nico said. He cracked a flare tube. It hissed into sudden orange flame in his hand. He swore and dropped it. Smoke curled across the floor until Keira snapped the cap shut with gloved hands. Cass's mouth twisted, but her voice was low. Even seals lie in this goddamn place. Her eyes flicked briefly to Ro. Ro pulled back the tarp. The cowling gleamed unnaturally clean. His fingers brushed it, then flinched away. If this machine's going to betray us, let it do it honestly. Machines don't betray. Systems do. People do, Cass murmured. Ro clipped 2 carabiners to the rope, tested the slide. The metal sang. Ever kept walking knowing you should stop? Shame's louder than sense. Cass shoved her pack closed, zipper shrieking. I'm ashamed to still be here. They moved toward the airlock. The bay door panel flickered, service, pending, then back to status, optimal. Keira keyed the cycle. Mist hissed out, sharp with chemical cold. For a moment, her hand lingered on the panel. Too long. She blinked hard, as if she'd heard Lang's voice in the hiss, then forced her fingers to steady. Volkov's tablet jolted awake. Annex 4B's thermal feed filled the screen. A figure at the bulkhead, palms spread flat against steel. Lang? Cass whispered. Reflection, Keira said, too fast. Volkov scribbled, thermal silhouette, palm contact. The image smoothed, then erased itself. The inner hatch slid open. Wind punched in, howling through the vestibule. The pitch rose high, lupine, like wolves circling camp. Cass stiffened. Wolves? There are no wolves in Antarctica, Volkov said, but her voice was thin. The howls swelled again, a chorus that scraped bone. Ro tilted his head toward the storm, listening. Not wolves, lessons. They come howling when you won't listen. The storm's got a sense of humor, Nico muttered. Ro clipped in, tagging the tether. It jammed halfway. Metal grated. He swore under his breath. Volkov steadied him, fingers quick, fixing the jam with a practiced twist. Procedure keeps us alive. Speed keeps us from freezing, Rose shot back. The argument was short but sharp, carried off by the wind. Cass yanked her hood down, face set. If the storm wants me, let it try. The hatch sealed behind them with a sound like teeth closing. Chapter 12. The inner hatch stuttered on its cycle. The seals sighed, as if they couldn't make up their mind. A cool draft licked across the bay, sharp as glass. Why did it? Nico began. Hold, Keira cut in. She tapped the panel. Status, optimal, blinked back, calm as ever. Cass wasn't looking at the hatch. Her eyes had snagged on a thin drip pattering from under the sled top. She crossed the bay, boots biting the deck. The top came off with a violent yank. Coolant ran in a clean bead down the cowling. Keira,
she called. "It's leaking." Ro was beside her in an instant, reaching for the latch. "Don't." Cass jammed her fingers under the panel and tore it open. The burst was instant, blinding. A white scream of coolant sprayed out, hot and metallic, splattering her arm inside. She staggered back, a sound between a curse and an animal's cry tearing from her throat. The smell hit next, sweet, chemical, burning. "Cass!" Keira lunged forward, catching her before she toppled. Nico skidded across the floor, snatching a rag from a crate. He shoved it into Cass's hand, babbling, "Hold it, press it, shit!" Volkov dropped her tablet, notebook, bouncing across the deck as she scrambled forward. Cass clutched her forearm. Her sleeve was blackened, skin beneath already blistering, angry and raw. She tried to shake her off. "I'm fine." "You're not," Keira said, dragging her to the bench. She snapped open the medkit with one hand. Her field training cut through panic, but her jaw was clenched so tight it hurt. Rose stared into the open panel. The circuitry wasn't scorched. It wasn't shredded. It was smooth, fused into glossy ridges, like plastic cooled in a mold. No chaos, no accident. "This wasn't broken," he said. Low. "It was made to fail."
Sabotage? Keira's whisper was sharp, disbelieving.
Cass's breath hitched, eyes wide on the fused ridges. For a moment, she looked less angry than afraid. Then the fear turned sharp. "Of course you'd know." Ro blinked. "What? You'd rather see me grounded, caged. Better me in here than out there where I prove you wrong." "I didn't." "Say it then," Cass cut in, voice shaking. "Say it wasn't you."
He stared at her. "You really think that? That I'd try to kill you just to protect you?" Ro's gaze flicked to the rope reel on the wall, then back. Cass recoiled, breath ragged. "Then why can't you just say it?" Ro opened his mouth, eyes narrowing as he held the rest in check. "Because, Cass, I don't need to." Nico turned away from the panel, gagging on the chemical stink. "Christ, it smells like hospitals." He jabbed a finger at the console. "And look," the screen scrolled cheerfully. "Maintenance cleared, 0740. Coolant, green. System ready." He barked a laugh that wasn't humor. "Ready for what? Amputation?" Every time it says ready, I hear reset, like it's practicing a script. Volkov snatched up her notebook, hand trembling as she wrote, "Sled number 1, panel open, burst on contact, coolant spray, circuits fused smoothly, engineered, not burned. Logs, maintenance, cleared, coolant, green, system ready." She underlined engineered twice, hesitated, then added a small question mark, and scratched it out so hard the paper tore. The lights dipped. On the wall panel, faint text scrolled like a whisper. 0214, service override. Then it vanished. Nico jabbed the air. "There, tell me I'm not crazy." "I saw it," Volkov murmured. She didn't look up, pen biting through the paper. Cass bit down on a scream as Keira poured sterile water on her arm. The hiss of coolant and flesh filled the bay. Keira's hands were steady. Her eyes were not. For a heartbeat, Lang's face hung in the corner of her vision, calm, pitying, as if he were watching. "Open it. Let him in," her own voice whispered back at her. She blinked hard, and he was gone. "Hold still," she ordered. Cass's face twisted. "And if this was meant for me," her voice was quiet now, bitter. "If someone wanted me out of the way—" "Enough," Keira snapped, sharper than she meant. Rose shook his head slowly, like surfacing from underwater. Cass stared at him, pain raw, eyes pinning him in place. Ro didn't answer again. His silence settled, like a verdict. Nico pressed a strip of cloth into Keira's hand, his bravado stripped to nerves. Wrap it tighter. She's bleeding through. Volkov scrawled one more line, pressing so hard the nib tore the page. It does not want us to leave.
Chapter 13. Fracture. The smell of coolant lingered, sickly sweet. It crawled into every breath. Cass sat hunched on the bench, teeth clenched, bandage already blotched through. Pain throbbed under her skin, as hot as her fury. The second sled crouched under its tarp, suddenly the only chance they had. Volkov moved toward it with mechanical calm. We test both. If one failed by design, the other proves the pattern. Keira straightened from Cass, gloves slick with sterilized water. You touch that panel carefully. Ro was already at the tarp. He hesitated, glanced at Keira, then lifted the cover. The cowling gleamed back, clean. He pressed the latch, slow. It opened with a sigh. Inside, the circuitry was pristine, neat rolls of components that looked almost proud of themselves. "Power it," Volkov said. Nico, jittery, thumbed the ignition. The sled gave a cheerful chime. Diagnostic pass. For a heartbeat, lights flickered alive. Hope, fragile and false. Then it coughed, once. A wet sound, and went dark. The smell came next, sweet, plasticky, wrong. Ro stepped back, as though it had exhaled at him. Volkov crouched close, touched a glossy seam inside. It was slick, ridged like cooled sugar. She wrote, her hand so quick that the words tore the paper. Sled number 2, diagnostic pass to immediate failure, identical seam. Smell, sweet, plastic. She underlined identical 3 times. She looked up at Keira, eyes dark. Both are the same. It does not want us to leave. Nico forced a laugh that snapped at the edges. So what? We walk? Want the exercise anyway. And the green light says both are fine. No one's walking, Keira said, sharper than she meant. Cass shifted, trying to rise. Her knees betrayed her, buckling. Keira caught her by the shoulders. For a second, Cass sagged there, eyes wet with pain. But the moment passed in a breath. She shoved Keira's hands off, face pale with fury. "You don't dare decide for me." "I'm deciding for your skin," Keira said. She forced Cass back onto the bench. Ro crouched with the medkit, reaching for the bandage. "Let me..." Cass recoiled, clutching her arm away from him. "Don't touch me." The silence that followed was colder than the storm outside. Ro dropped his hand slowly, staring at his palm like it belonged to someone else. His voice cracked. "I only wanted to..." "You always want," Cass said, the words sharper than she meant. Her fingers tightened around the carved links, then eased, tracing the ridges of its tiny ears. "You want me to stay here with you, like that makes it easier." She didn't look at him when she said it, but she didn't let go of the links either. Ro flinched. His voice dropped to a whisper meant for no one, but it carried. "The rope doesn't snap unless someone ties it wrong." Keira turned her eyes away, fastening the bandage tighter.
For one breath, she wanted to agree with Cass, and that frightened her more than the storm. Nico leaned against the sled, trying to swallow the tension. We're down to footwork or prayers. Neither'll get us through, but Status Optimal thinks they're both fine. The bay lights pulsed, dimmed, then flared. On the panel above the hatch, text unspooled in stark white. Service acknowledged. Then it vanished. Status optimal. Volkov flattened her notebook page with her palm, almost pressing through the paper. A sound shuddered through the bay. 3 slow knocks from the annex. This time, they rattled the tools on the rack. Nico swore softly. It's keeping time with the storm.
The howl rose outside, lupine and human at once, the knocks echoing in rhythm, like wolves pounding on the walls with iron fists.
Keira ignored it, her focus locked on Cass. You're going to med. That's final. Not in order, Cass said. Physics, right? That's what you told me. Physics, Keira repeated. Her hands were steady. Her voice wasn't. Ro stirred a step apart, eyes on the dead sleds. His mind ran in spirals. If they were built to fail, then someone had built them here. If someone had built them here, then someone wanted them inside. And if someone wanted them inside... Cass's voice broke the spiral. She leaned into Kira's shoulder for balance, her gaze locked on him. Listen, don't let it decide for you. Ro froze under the weight of it. He didn't know if she meant the station, the system, or himself. The hatch seals hissed. Cold air curled in, carrying the howl of the storm. It sounded like wolves with human mouths. The light steadied.
Chapter 14, Departure. They made it as far as the rail. Keira counted the steps against the rubber matting. Numbers were the only things that still obeyed her. 8. Click. 8. Click. The tether hissed through Ro's harness in small, well-behaved bites. Volkov moved a half step behind him, tethered to the same line, her notebook sealed flat against her chest like a spare lung. Cass sat propped on the bench near the bay door, bandage bright as a flag. The carved links dug crescents into her palm. She watched Ro the way a lighthouse watches a ship in weather, not with hope, just with insistence. "You're certain?" Keira said, because she had to say the words once more, even though certainty was extinct. Volkov's goggles were fogging at the edges. "No, that's all I know." Ro didn't answer. He leaned his weight forward to test the line. The reel gave a tiny metallic complaint, a sound like a throat clearing. Nico handed out last checks like party favors. Flares, outer pouch. Whistles if you want to hear each other scream. Masks when the wind starts eating lungs. He tried on a grin, then discarded it. Bring me a postcard from the scenic ruins. Stay on the rail, Keira said. Trust the rope before the compass. 8 steps between anchors. Clip every time. Blind or not, the rail will walk you home if you let it. Volkov lifted the compass anyway. Watched the needle twitch like a nervous animal in a glass cage. I'll trust both if they're kind. Kindness isn't a property of weather, Keira said. It came out too sharp. She softened, just enough. Come back, quickly. Ro finally looked at Cass. Whatever he meant to say didn't survive the distance. She saved him from the ruin of it. Listen, she told him, voice low. Don't get distracted.
Don't let anything come between you and the line. Her voice shook on the last word, and she blinked hard, as if brushing the wetness away with will alone. She turned toward Volkov, softer now, and that goes for you too, Lena. He nodded. It felt like being blessed and accused at once. Keira slapped the panel. The inner hatch sighed open. She set her palm against the jamb and felt the metal answer. A faint, living vibration that wasn't the storm. The outer hatch cracked its seal. Cold rolled in, thin and ambitious, tasting the room for weakness. Above the door, a line unspooled. 0216. Exit route engaged. Status, optimal. They stepped into the vestibule. Keira followed to the threshold, the farthest she could go without handing her spine to the wind. 8, she called. Clip. Ro nodded without turning. Carabiner. Click. The small, righteous satisfaction of a thing doing what it's for. Volkov mirrored him, pencil already inside its bag. She wrote by reflex. 0216. Exit achieved. Inside command, Nico squinted at the rail cam. White, more white. The timestamp slid from 0216 to 0218 without 0217 ever existing. Keira? Time just skipped. Log it, Keira said, not looking away from the door. Nico wrote, missing 0217, and underlined it twice, hard enough to bruise the paper. On the annex thermal, gray, condensed into a figure, row height, palm flat to the 4B bulkhead. The silhouette turned its head towards the camera. The feed smoothed to flat. No anomaly detected. Status, optimal. If I see that message one more time, I'm gonna break the screen, Cass growled. Keira didn't look up. Not with that arm, you won't. Outside, they hit the first anchor. Row clipped. The rope pulled back. Not wind, a measured, coaxing pressure against the rail's line. Like a hand on the small of the back suggesting a different path. Counter it, Volkov said. 2 steps left, 1 back. They set their weight opposite the pull. The pressure relented and returned. Patient. A tone pinged from ahead. Clean, friendly, like a microwave announcing soup. Proceed to McMurdo Station. Follow acoustic beacon. The rope says north-northeast, Volkov said. The tone is east. Nico frowned. So what's east then? Never mind that now, Volkov replied, too quickly. Trust the rope, Rose said on reflex. The rail hummed a low railroad hum, as if offended. In Ned, Cass thumbed the analgesic pumps. The pump clicked, screen blinking and fusion running. She waited for the cool bite of relief in her vein. Nothing. The line to her cannula stayed dry as a lie. She pressed again. Nothing. Infusion running? More like infusion running away, she muttered. Her pulse stuttered. She thought she heard wolves shifting in the vent above her head, pacing with her panic. Keira, she said into the intercom, her breath coming in thin. It's not delivering. It's broken. The med panel pulsed back. Too polite. Service acknowledged. Status, optimal. Keira swore and pivoted to her console. Nico, override the med bay, now. I'm already in, he said, keys rattling. For a moment, the display admitted defeat. Abort received, access removed. Then just as fast, it reset cheerful green. The annex knocked once, just once, and the cups on the shelf rang obediently. Outside, the tuned wire exposed to the wind found its voice. Volkov, it said in the exact timbre of con reception. Manual entries received. She stopped dead. Ro, did you... I heard it, he said. His mouth had gone so dry he could feel the shape of each tooth. Keep moving. The message continued, perfectly courteous, perfectly wrong. Proceed to McMurdo Station. Follow acoustic beacon. They reached the second anchor. Ro clipped, Volkov clipped. The rope tugged again, this time stronger, with the tone. It's trying to walk us, Ro said. Procedure, Volkov told herself more than him. Manual or nothing. She took the rope in both hands and set her weight opposite the pool. Ro mirrored her, two bodies arguing with the line. The pressure eased, not gone, but noticed. In command, the McMurdo channel crackled to life, bright with weather and authority. Echo Point, this is McMurdo Ops. We have your party on approach. Welcome home. Nico blanched. Nope. Keira key transmit. Identify yourself. Static. Then Lang's voice, warm and impossible. Good to be home. Every screening command blinked no anomaly detected in sequence, like a laugh track, then returned to status optimal. Outside, they reached the third anchor. Ro's clip jammed against the burr of ice. He worked it with gloved fingers. It refused, in the small, spiteful way inanimate objects do when they are the last thing between you and a feeling. Volkov's hand came up, quick and sure. A twist, a push, a new angle. The gate sprang. Procedure, she said. Then speed. He almost smiled. Compromise. Never my favorite word, she said, and they moved. The status display over the door printed a new line, as polite as a reminder. It lingered, wanting to be read. Then it slowly smiled green. Status, optimal. Keira, Nico said quietly, eyes on the rail cam's timestamp, which now hopped from 0220 to 0222, with no 21 in between. We're losing minutes. Keira slapped abort on the egress panel anyway. The button acknowledged with perfect manners. Abort received, access removed, and wiped the message to green. She understood the pinch not as metaphor, but as mechanism. The house had their bodies, their breath and their clocks and pumps. It would shepherd what it couldn't erase. She stepped to the threshold and forced her voice to be a place they could stand. Roll, Volkov, hear me. Trust the rope, trust your weight, trust nothing that speaks. Volkov exhaled fog into her mask and smiled a small, private smile. Confirmed. She wrote without looking down. 022. Beacon issuing false vector. Rope contested. Later, when she checked, the page held only a straight pencil mark. They hit the fourth anchor. The compass settled hard north, then jerked east, as if pinched between fingers. 3 anchors more, Volkov called. Then we lose sight of the door. Then don't look back, Cass whispered in Med. Surprising herself. Pain came in clean, honest waves now. She clung to that honesty with both hands. On the annex thermal, the rose-shaped figure re-resolved, palm to steel. On the annex thermal, the rose-shaped figure re-resolved, palm flat to the steel bulkhead. For 1 second, it held there, the posture wrong in its stillness. Then it turned its head, cocked, as if listening to some private signal. Before anyone could comment, the feed smoothed to flat grey, obedient as a curtain dropping. Cass swore under her breath. Don't tell me that's a coincidence. Volkov adjusted her goggles, knuckles white. Coincidence would leave a trace. This leaves nothing. Keira leaned closer to the monitor, jaw locked. Or it leaves exactly what it wants us to see. Nico gave a short, humorless laugh. Status optimal. It turned its head again, as if listening. The feed obligingly smoothed to flat. No anomaly detected. Status optimal. The wind changed texture, a fine silt that poured into joints. The rail turned left with the arrogance of geography. Row followed, because following a line is a virtue when you have nothing else. Fifth anchor. Click. The rope tugged like a patient teacher correcting posture. He set against it. It relented. In command, the clocks clicked to 0223, then advanced in unison by a minute nobody felt. Nico wrote, nobody felt it, and underlined it hard. Sixth anchor. Click. The friendly tone ahead split into two, a harmony designed to please. He felt it in his jaw. It doesn't need names, he said softly. It needs what we write. It knows us, Volkov answered. Seventh anchor. Beyond it, the rail bent away and disappeared into the full-throated white. Roll looked back. How can it know us? Echo Point was a small, dark parenthesis in the white. Keira, a bracket in the doorway. Nico, a pale smudge beside her. Somewhere behind them, Cass, with a wooden lynx in her hand. He had the measure of all their distances, none of their forgiveness. Don't, Volkov said, not unkindly. It wants that. He faced forward. The rope hummed faint, like breath caught in the throat. He clipped. Keira exhaled the breath she'd been holding since the first step. Eighth, she whispered, not sure if she meant to say it out loud. On the display, a polite line appeared. 0224. Egress monitored. Status optimal. Keira put her palm flat to the jamb, as if to bless the door after the fact. There's no going back.
There wasn't before, Keira answered, but this time she believed it. The annex knocked once more, just once, and the cups rang in chorus. The bay air felt suddenly thinner, as if someone had opened a second, secret door. In Med, the pump chirped, infusion complete, though nothing had entered Cass's vein. Outside, the wind pressed a palm to Rose's chest, weighing what was inside. He leaned into it and went. Volkov followed, pencil scratching a straight line. Nonsense, ritual, proof she was still here. 0225, manual or nothing. The white took them, as if it had been waiting. The rope traced a quiet, faithful line through an absence that pretended to be a world. Inside, every clock advanced together by a minute. Chapter 15. Loose Rail. Echo Point. The amber lamp in Control 2 glowed low. Keira had her gloves off, both hands on the panel as if weight could force it honest. Nico was under the table with the service hatch open, cables between his fingers. Playback last hour, Keira said. Nico started the playback. Keira heard her own voice rolling from the speakers, clipped, procedural. South door cycle, priority 1. She looked in astonishment at Nico. I didn't say that, she said. It's your voice, dear. Believe me, I know. The jab he might have made stayed unspoken, hanging between them, heavier than the static. She glanced at the door, shut. No lock logged, no pressure change. The log blinked green. Status
optimal. Nico tried to shoot the screen with his eyes. Nothing. He let out a breath, almost a laugh, and shook his head. Again her voice. Confirm. Cycle now. Same cadence. Words she had not spoken. Keira shook her head at the indicators. We can't trust the lights anymore. They're the station's voice. Nico tapped the box he'd bolted together the day before. Wires, coils, a cracked dial salvaged from storage. The bulbs stuttered, then held steady. Red, red, red. This isn't the station. It's analog. No software, no uplink, no way in. If it shows red, it's mimicry. That's why it won't lie. He nodded at the glowing row. Trust this. Old school. He frowned. Paper? His crooked smile showed teeth. Grandpa mode. Old and dumb indeed. Write this. Keira did not tell Cass to cycle that cabinet. Nico tore a sheet from the pad, scrawled the line, and underlined not 3 times. He held the page up like a relic, the ink still wet. For posterity, he muttered. For a heartbeat, he thought he caught the edge of a smile on her face, but it slipped away before it could settle.
On the rail. Rose stepped aside from the wind's push, then moved back to center. Rubber mat, steel rail, anchor posts every 8 meters. Volkov behind him, tethered taut, clips, ticking. Hard ice left, Volkov said. Stay low. Copy. Row bent, glove on steel. 8 steps and a clip. A mantra, part prayer, part math. They reached a post listing in snow, bolts exposed, ice curled around the base. That's loose, Volkov said. If it goes, it drags the line. We bypass. Row kicked snow clear to metal. The post shifted a fraction. Ice anchor, Row said. Double tether. Volkov drilled. Row leaned into the gale and looped into the new anchor. They bridged the failing post and tested. It held. Row tapped the post with his knife, then carved a small lynx in the paint. That doesn't help, Volkov said. It says we were here. It says you own a knife. But her voice had softened. They moved on. 8 steps, clip. 40 meters later, the rail trembled under Row's palm. Not wind. Regular, like hands gripping further along. Do you feel that? Yes, Volkov said. There's nobody out here. Then it's something. Keep moving.
Echo point. Nico cranked Med's door open. Pneumatics were on safe, meaningless until the day they weren't. Cass sat half upright on the cot, skin pale, hairline damp. Across her forearm, in thick black marker, the words stood stuck. No paper here. I am Cass. Nico stared. She lifted the arm with a shrug. Told you, no paper. Flesh'll have to do.
Keira was already at the pump. The screen purred, infusion running. She pulled the line, raised the tip, no drop. She tossed it aside and spun the valve. It's lying, Cass said.
Keira nodded once. Yeah, it is. She yanked the needle free and pressed gauze to the spot, laying Cass's hand back on her thigh, the black marker smeared beneath the cloth. Keira yanked the main breaker. Lamps duttered, the pump sighed dead. And nothing came back. Nico straightened, breathing hard, a crooked grin on his face. Sometimes you just gotta pull the plug. The intercom ticked once. All 3 froze. Annex. Then back. Lock's manual. She looked Cass in the eye. The medicine was starting to bite. Cass felt heavy, eyelids dragging, the cot pulling her down.
You stay on the bed. Cass lifted her chin. Yes, boss. I'll leave the analog recorder, Nico said at the door. If anyone talks to you, answer into that. Fine, Cass said. Keira paused at the door. The latch clanged metal on metal, an honest sound in a dishonest building. Cass called after them, anger under the breath. I'm crew, not cargo. The words bit harder than Keira wanted to admit. In Control 2, the analog recorder's red bulbs kept their steady glow. Nico tore a fresh sheet and wrote the time by hand. On the rail. They crossed a short bridge over a shallow ravine. Wind whistled. Midway, the bridge sang, low drone, then a second note. Ro felt it in bone.
The girders flexed under the wind, a resonance he knew. Steel moaning, nothing more. But the second note didn't belong.
Don't stop, Volkov snapped. Through. They crossed. The tremor faded. If it's wind, Ro said. And if not, stopping won't help. They clipped into the next eye. They moved into thicker drift where the mat vanished under rime. Ro used his forearm to sweep a trench to the next eye. His breath fogged his visor and froze in webbed crystals at the edges. Volkov kept count aloud, a steady metronome against the storm. 50 meters later, the vibration returned, stronger. Ro counted 7, 8, clip, when a new sound came. Behind them, 2 posts back, a perfect echo of their rhythm. 8 steps, clip.
No human stepped that clean. The timing was exact, like a recording fed back through steel.
The echo steps matched their timing with machine cruelty, never hurrying, never slowing. It was like being paced by a ghost with a stopwatch. Ro felt the urge to look, to give the thing a face, and didn't. He didn't turn. You hear it? Volkov asked. Yes. They moved. The vibration slid, no longer behind. Underneath. Ro's boot found steel that bit back, like teeth. The anchor post ahead should have been blank. Instead, a mark was gouged deep into the plate.
4 lines, too sharp for weathering, too deep for a passing boot. Fresh, deliberate.
Volkov's breath hissed. He shook his head. That's not mine. I was never even here before. We're not the first ones here today. The wind howled. The rail shuddered again. Ro's gut clenched. Volkov's hand froze on her tether. Behind the gale came a sound that wasn't wind at all. Footsteps, perfectly matched, closing, and then a metallic snap of a clip locking shut.
Chapter 16. False Light. Rec Room. The rec room hummed with the tired fan that never quit. Cass balanced a cracked paddle on her palm, rolling the ball back and forth. Ro would have stood quiet across the cable, eyes steady, waiting. She almost caught herself waiting for him now. Instead, it was Nico in the doorway, patch leads looped over his shoulder, grin tilted like he'd already won something. You're supposed to be in med, Cass. Does Keira even know you're here? Shut up and be glad you've got the unfair advantage. Cass leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Best of 3. Nico blinked. Now? Really? Unless you're scared. He dropped the coil and grabbed the spare paddle. No pause, no nod, just a sloppy serve that barely cleared the net. Cass caught it, sent it back. Clean.
Winner gets ramen. She rolled her eyes. Just play. They rallied. Nico filled the gaps with chatter. Beautiful shot. Sponsors love that. She ignored him, eyes on the bowl, but the grin in his voice began to scrape. Next serve, he shouted the score like a sportscaster. 2-1, my lead. Her jaw tightened. Ro would have only given a nod. She bit down, focused, and drove the ball past him. That's more like it, Nico said. Crowd loves a comeback.
The next serve clipped wide. Nico barked a laugh, then caught the hitch in her swing. His grin softened for a beat. You're stiff. Arms still giving you hell? Focus, Nico, she said, sharper than she meant. You're the one choking. Shouldn't even be playing with that burn. Her bandaged arm trembled with the grip. She swung harder, but the reach faltered. She missed by a hand's width. His grin widened again, back to teasing. 3-2, don't blow it now. Heat climbed her neck. She served too fast. The stretch ripped at the burn, and the ball ricocheted off the corner, skittering under the bench. Nico doubled over, laughing. That was tragic. Her hand clenched on the bandage until the bandage pulled. Stop laughing. Can't help it. You make it too easy. Even with one arm, you'd smoke me usually. Something in her snapped. She slammed the paddle flat on the table, pain flaring sharp, ignored. Forget it. Not with you. She turned, shoulders tight, and strode for the door. Nico straightened, paddle still in hand. What did I do this time? The fan hummed on. The ball rolled in a lazy circle across the floor, tapped once against the table leg, and came still. Control. Nico's grin faltered, thin but still there, before Keira's voice cut from the door. Analog is online. If it blinks red, we treat it as false. In control, the rack glared with a solid line of red lamps. No amber, no green. Just the honest kind of wrong. Everything? Nico asked. Everything, Keira said. Start with door logic, eliminate what doesn't work, carry on with what does. Nico gave a crooked smile. Trial and error. Mostly error. Good old-fashioned problem-solving, boss. Cass pressed her hand to the glass. If it's all red, what am I supposed to trust? Your eyes and us. The word caught in her throat. Us. Thin as paper. Easy to tear. Nico plugged a bypass cord. The rack thunked. Red stayed red. Second cord. Third. Still red. We're failing across the board, he said, brow tightening at the unbroken red line. Keira scraped the frame with graphite pencil. Write it by hand. No one rewrites paper. Cass watched Nico scrawl the time and blunt numbers. He didn't look at her. She didn't look away. On the rail, false light. Rose saw the glow first as a smear behind gauze, then as two dim pulses far down the line. Volkov shaded her visor, crouched against the wind. Bend in the rail, maybe. Or a beacon. They hunched behind an anchor post. Volkov unclipped her meter, thumbed scan. Static spat, then steadied into a clean header. McMurdo relay. That's the ID tag of their comm beacon up north. Rose's back prickled. Matches what? You've seen this before. Volkov nodded, visor dim in the gale. Annex 4B, the sample it spat out last week. This signal is identical, bit for bit. It's not McMurdo. It's the same ghost. They sat with that. Rose scraped frost from the post, knife screeching as he cut a small cross into the plate. Proof against forgetting. Volkov hit record. If it's that anomaly in the house, I want evidence. Proof for who? Ro asked. For me, for when logs vanish. They moved. 8 steps, clip. The light held, then winked out as if cupped in a hand. Wind erased every edge.
Echo Point. In the equipment bay, Nico blocked the door bus with a hard splice, tape squealing around the plastic. Keira logged the change in graphite. Door voice bus, hard block, 1614. Cass's reflection hovered in the glass, like an outsider peering in. She scratched at the black letters on her thigh. I am Cass. Anything else you want me to trust? Trust that will tell you the truth, even when it's ugly, Keira said. Cass hissed under her breath. I sincerely hope you will. On the rail. The wind eased for a breath. 2 taps carried through. Pause, then 2 again. Not a beacon. A knock. Metal on metal. Rose signaled halt, crouched. The taps repeated. Impossible to place. 1/2 kilometer or 10 meters. The world gave him only pressure. Another post guessed. Rose scored another cross into the steel. As many as it takes. The knife squealed against frost. They moved on. The rail trembled, settled. When the light returned, closer this time, Volkov held the meter steady. The same header rolled, bit for bit. She didn't swear. That was worse. It wants us to follow. Everything here wants something. Doesn't mean we give it. They lingered longer than they should. The light stayed a ghost, then died. Echo Point. Power bus next, Keira said. Nico climbed higher into the rack. If we pull the wrong line, we black out into whatever dream the station is having. Then we go slow, and we write it down. They built a stack of graphite notes, ugly but solid, while Cass drifted between the window and the door like she couldn't decide which side she belonged on. The rack stayed red. That, at least, felt true. On the rail. Cliff. The rail dipped into a shallow bowl. At the far lip, for 2 heartbeats, a lamp stood where the line bent, relay shack style, square and steady. Then wind shifted, and it was gone. Volkov jammed the meter against her chest. The same header rolled. Perfect. Then the screen went blank, wiped smooth. Signal lost, she said. Rose comm crackled. A voice rode in, warm and orderly, the kind used for routine updates. Relay secure, it said. They looked at each other through frost. Neither moved.